Oh, so here we are, folks. Welcome to the it's the Jim Show, our Victoria Electric Vehicle Club twice monthly coffee chat, and so far we're still on Zoom. For those of you who missed my mask, my wife made these this morning. Nice, eh? Got a whole wardrobe of them now.
Have you tried the test where you hold up a flame in front of the mask and blow through it, see if the flame goes out?
My flame went out years ago.
No, I mean a Bic stick lighter.
Oh,
that flame.
yes. I can't hold a candle to it. You're right.
Karen, don't expect a straight answer from Dave.
It never gets better, right, Eric?
No, it just gets worse. If everybody gets to know you.
Yeah, you can demonstrate that for us right now. We'll check to see if your masks are working. No. You need an actual flame.
So anyway, we have this the Jim Show. So we have today a great lineup. So we're going to hear from Jim Heinsohn, who's been doing some great work for us on the federal Canada measurements, Canada's information. He'll let us know what that's all about and update what's going on. We have James, the Jim Locke, and I know nobody should call him Jim to his face because that is not his name, but it fits for the day. We're going to give us a bit of a PV tour, eh, James and Lisa? From California, folks. They're in California.
Call them Jim left.
And then we have Jim Standen from the SSI EVA, the Salt Spring Island Electric Vehicle Association, and they've done many great and wonderful things over the past years. And I don't think I've seen Jim since the Revolution event over on the island a couple summers back, and that was fabulous, but I think it was a lot of work, but you guys did a great job. Anyway, we'll be hearing from Jim, and he can give us all kinds of great information about what they've been up to. Glenn Gary is going to, although Glenn's not a Jim name, it's pretty damn close in my opinion. And I don't know why I always misspell Jim with a G, but anyway, so he's going to do a battery day coming event update, maybe give us some insights into what's going on with the Tesla battery situation, not to mention all the other great and wonderful rumors that are flying about. I do want to mention one thing first, so I'm going to start. We'll go through them in that order, maybe, folks, if that's okay. If not, if you have to leave, Jim, or any of you Jims, let me know and we can juggle the order. This is not formal. I do want to mention we got a notice through our site from Derek Houston, who's an artist. If you go to his site, Derek Houston is fabulous art. Anyway, he thinks it'd be a cool idea to purchase a Cybertruck. For him, he's thinking 10,000 is kind of the limit he wants to spend. He only needs a truck maybe occasionally. And so anyway, he brought up that notion, and it's sort of like a car share thing, I guess. And I think it's a great idea, but he's happy to talk to people, and we have his phone number somewhere. I don't have it right here, but he would be happy to talk to folks about that notion. Of course, it's a couple years away. So I just think it's neat that these things are coming up. Then there was also the high school students in a Esquimalt. There was a Victoria student talking about an Esquimalt drive-in theater event, which is not an EV thing, but I think we could get our club involved with it. And it sounds like an awful lot of fun. They've got a parking lot would hold about 100 cars, A&W next door, so on. Anyway, it's another little thing that was going on. Jim Henshaw's in the background pushing the buttons, and he brought us coffee from Jim's coffee shop. Where is that?
It's actually from a movie. I can't remember what it is.
Awesome. So, Jim Heinsohn, do you want to start us off with your information?
Okay. So can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's see if I can share screen here. Can anybody see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go to, should be able to go to slideshow mode. Can you see that all right?
Yep.
Okay, so in the way of an update about what's going on with kilowatt hours versus time is really a topic, and what's going on with Measurement Canada, that what we've seen. A few things, just a few things for you today. One, what's going on with DCFC fees, the implications of kilowatt hour versus time charging, and the cost implications of what Measurement Canada seems to be still sticking with in terms of their requirements for sub-metering. So this is about DCFC, and on the left-hand side, there's scenarios, if you will, charging scenarios. I find with my EV, even though it's rated at 100 kilowatts, if the temperature's down, it'll only pull about 20. Older EVs or EVs in colder weather will only do 20. My EV or eSol did the same thing. So at 20 kilowatts, under the BC Hydro Gen 1 chargers, as you know, they're all 35 cents a kilowatt hour, so I pay 35 cents a kilowatt hour. But over on the right there, under Fortis or Petrocan, I'd be paying, or anybody with an EV in my situation, 90 cents or 80 to 90 cents a kilowatt hour. The Teslas, I understand, under 60 kilowatts are 44 cents a kilowatt hour, I'll put in quotes, or if it's sharing an AB charger. So at 50 kilowatts, I've never heard of anybody getting 50 out of a 50, maybe in the high 40s. Again, the first generation are 35 cents. The Fortis and Petrocan would be close in that range, 38, 34 cents a kilowatt hour. At a 100 kilowatt charger on the left, I've never heard anyone getting over 70 to 80 in a conventional EV. So at that rate, there's, of course, the first gen hydro units don't do 100. Second one, I've heard rumors that they're capable of 100 or 125, but there's no pricing, of course. Fortis, haven't heard of them having 100. Petrocan is 22, about 22 cents a kilowatt hour if you're getting 75 kilowatts. So comparing this to gasoline at the bottom, gasoline at $1 a liter would be about 50 cents equivalent kilowatt hour, and $1.50 about 75 cents a kilowatt hour equivalent. So basically charging at 20 kilowatts by time, or 18 to 20, 16 to $18 an hour, is more expensive than gasoline. So that's one of the factors that's driving the movement to get to kilowatt hour charging. Is it's, and I leave it up to all you to discuss, is it fair? Is it fair that you pay according to how fast you're charging? So I'll leave a little time for comment on that and move on to the other subject, which is Strata AC charging. Anybody have any comments about DC time versus kilowatt hours? Should people pay more if they take longer to charge there? That's another thing that goes around sometimes. No comments on that? Okay. So the next slide is about this whole thing about time-based EV charging fees. So first of all, I want to say up front, this is not dedicated level 2 charging. This is scenarios in Stratas where, in order to be able to charge a lot of vehicles in Strata with the power that's available to the building, you have to use power or power shared management on the circuits. So that means multiple vehicles share an L2 circuit. So in this first slide scenario on the left, I've got a situation here. Let's say there's 10 EVs on an 80 amp circuit. And the table on to the right is the number of EVs plugged in and how much kilowatts they would get based on how many are plugged in. So if you have one EV plugged in, it probably limited to 7.7 because the Bolt and some of the higher end conventional EVs will only charge at 7.7. Tesla, I think I heard it'll do 10. But if you have two plugged in, they'd each get 6.7 all the way down to, if you had 10 vehicles plugged in, they get 1.3 kilowatts. The next, the third column over is if you charged at a market value of 15 cents a kilowatt hour, they'd all pay 15 cents a kilowatt hour. If you go to the immediate right of that, column 4, and you charged $1 per hour, time-based rate of $1 an hour, according to the Measurement Canada rules of not being able to charge by the kilowatt hour, the only EV situation that would be charged 15 cents a kilowatt hour would be if you had 2 EVs plugged in. If you have more EVs, they're charged more. And if you have fewer EVs and one in that case, you'd be paying 13 cents. On the extreme case there is the 75 cents. So overnight, if you had 10 EVs plugged in and the rate was $1 a kilowatt hour, they're paying 75 cents a kilowatt hour. And that's really the core of this, I won't call it a debate or controversy about Measurement Canada's rules. If you drop the rate to 50 cents an hour, then it's fair at four vehicles plugged in, but of course, the more vehicles plugged in, the more they pay per kilowatt hour. And this is exactly the opposite of the desired result, because the behavior that this would induce is that people would plug in their car when there are as few as possible vehicles there. Like plug in when there's one there and you get a great rate, 13 cents. But that happens in the daytime. And what do we want? We want them to plug in at night. So this is not a good path. It's not good for the grid. It's not good for EV owners. And some would say it's not fair. So the last slide I have here is, can you see that one all right?
Yep.
Okay. So the last one I have is what's the difference between what shared L2 technology is able to deliver and what Measurement Canada wants. So on the left-hand side, I've got various descriptions or criteria or elements like accuracy. So I'll speak to that one first. So on the accuracy, current L2s on the market, I won't say all of them, these are shared L2s now. These are not your, your $800 or $900 units. These are units that are capable of sharing a circuit. So they're about 95% accuracy. I've got word today that they're really more like 97% accurate in terms of measuring kilowatt hours. But to the immediate right of that, you'll see the measurement criteria for a meter that you can use to charge by the kilowatt hour is 99.95%. So the difference is, say, 97 or 95 to 97 versus 99.95. So an EVSE cost for the shared unit, it's all over the map right now. There's very little in the way of competition. So $1,500 to $3,500 for that unit. They're much more expensive than your $800 dedicated L2 for a single family house. Measurement Canada scenario would add, I think $100 is low, but I've been trying to get ideas, $100 to $500 onto that cost because of the higher accuracy. In the case of the current market, we'll call them their ChargePoint have a model, Flow have a model. There's no installation inspection required because you're forced to charge by the hour. You're not charging by the kilowatt hour. There's no extra EVSE cost because we're using that as a base. There's no annual inspection fee. On the Measurement Canada rules, there's an installation inspection cost at which an inspector comes and tests the springs on your scale, like David Grove talked about several times. And we threw in a number there between $50 and $100. I've never had anybody come to my house for anything that didn't cost less than $100. The Measurement Canada Weights and Measurements Act specifies that the inspector gets paid $60 an hour, door to door, and 53 cents a kilometer. So I can't see getting out of there for less than $100. There's an extra EVSE cost of $150 to $600. And then there's an annual inspection fee every year. I think Dave Grove, your thing was 5 years or something on the scales. That's what I've looked up. Anyway, the rules for electrical devices are every year. So that's another $100 a year, like forever. So what are you trying to save the consumer with all these extra costs is about, on the second column there, the cost of the error between 95% and 99.95% is about $13 a year. But that's plus or minus. I mean, the 95% unit might give you a break. You might get it on the other side. So the annual cost for a conventional meter that's available in the market now, you might lose up to $13 in value of electricity. The Measurement Canada unit would cost $50 to $100 a year for these inspection fees, and of course the extra cost of the unit going in. So in a 50 units, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So a 50 unit strata, it might be plus or minus $650 a year for the current offering on the market. And with Revenue Canada, it could be $5,000 a year. So the other thing to keep in mind here is that BC really leads, certainly leads Canada, if not North America, in having strata rules about EV charging that, and in combination with the Section 6.9 of the Strata Act that says you can't make money off any service. So the Strata can also adjust for the cost per kilowatt hour to make sure that they don't get too much money from the EV meters, and relate that back to the revenue grade meter that's there anyway to monitor all the EVs. So the chance of getting, overpaying by $650 is even further reduced. So this is where the sort of the tussle is. James, as you know, or some of you know, we got a letter back from the president of Measurement Canada about a week ago saying that they intend to enforce or use the annual inspection requirements that are in the Weights and Measures Act for EVSD submetering. So my wrap up here now, my views at this point is that this is going to kill off getting EV infrastructure in stratas, because even in my stratas case, you have no idea if Revenue Canada will come along and impose a requirement that say by the year 2030, all your equipment has to meet their standards. And that would mean taking out everything you've got and replacing it with all the new stuff. And then there's the hard sell of telling EV users, well, you only pay $300 a year for electricity, but you're going to shell out $100 a year to have an inspection. I don't know how to sell that one. So that's where it stands right now in terms of trying to get some leverage with Measurement Canada to consider the case of strata units as a special case, if you will, or some leeway on these regulations. Thanks, James.
Jim, if
I'll
you
hop on and comment for a minute, if I might. So what Jim has done here is he's really detailed the regulatory and the technical issues before us. If, the status quo that Measurement Canada likes to say they've been proactively chasing down since 2018 and have done zero. What we have here is regulations and technicalities that are not being led by good policy. It's poor policy at Measurement Canada that is hanging up the federal government's plan on expanding EVs across Canada. And then that messes up Environment Canada and Transport Canada as well. So yeah, a lot of this, all this is entirely true, and it's a policy issue. Policy is affected by heat on politicians. Thanks.
Jim, if you can unshare your screen so that people can see the speakers more clearly. And I've got everybody on mute except for the Jims who are speaking today. So unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
I would just comment perhaps quickly that I had a conversation with a councillor with the City of Colwood recently. This issue, I brought up this issue. He was quite adamant that they want time charging because it's in his mind that people who hog chargers by overstaying past their time will somehow leave if they know they're only allowed half an hour or 1 hour by being paid by the hour, and not by staying for as long as they need based upon how much juice they want to get. I argued with him quite a bit for, it must have gone on for half an hour. I couldn't get him to understand. I didn't agree with him. The issue of the inequity in the pricing didn't matter to him at all. He said the only thing they're worried about from the council point of view is getting cars out of those spots that are hogging the spots. So I thought that while Tesla does the idle fee, and I think, charging people extra money, that would do it. So I'm not sure if the technology, how that would work, but I know Tesla does it. They had this problem.
Yeah, if I could respond to that. That would apply to the first slide about DCFCs or even public L2s. Just to clarify, the second part is all related to stratas, in which case it's really your own parking space anyway. Just clarify that.
Yeah, I was talking about the parking issue and overstaying, and he claimed that their biggest concern was that, and you can't tow them because that doesn't work, and so you have to do it charged by the time. And I didn't understand why he was incapable of understanding, in my opinion, the fact that charging by the kilowatt was still a better solution.
Yeah, the other thing I don't understand on that one, Dave, is even if they were charging by time, if you're not drawing a charge, they're not billing you anymore. So it doesn't encourage you to leave, right?
No.
Well,
but
actually, municipalities do have the way of doing it. He's just not either aware of it or whatever. Any municipal spot on the roadway or off the roadway is governed by either their streets bylaw, their off-streets parking bylaw. They can charge a fine in the schedule for sitting there and not charging, or they can tow it away. They have all the authority to do that. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'll pass that on. Was quite surprised that a civic engineer a councillor would have an issue with this on the opposite side. But there it is.
As Jim says,
I can speak a little bit on that if you want.
Yes, please.
This is Steve. I work with the City of Victoria and EV infrastructure part of the time, and certainly one of the tasks that we've been involved in was implementing a fee for our EV chargers. They're free at the moment, and they're likely to stay free at least for the time being, because of. But the intent was to introduce a fee before now. The fee would be an hourly rate, and the reason it would have been an hourly rate was because our priority was to manage accessibility rather than prioritize any other issue. And of course, when you're charging your vehicles, especially with DC fast chargers, you end up on a trickle charge if you're approaching full. So the opportunity would be that people could park for longer, charge a relatively small amount, and block the access to the charger for folk that are needing charge more rapidly. So that was part of the reason, and the measurement issues. But mostly it was about accessibility, which is why we've lent towards time-based fee. The other piece there is that it is really focused on. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. There was another point I was going to make there as well. And we can control it through bylaws. So we can, if you're not charging, we can. There'll be amendment coming through to our bylaws shortly, I hope, that will specify that you can't park in an EV spot without charging. So that'll stop. Again, it will maximize access and maximize use of the infrastructure. On the Measurement Canada stuff as well, I think it's really it's great work on Jim's part, and it was certainly raised by our council yesterday when I was in front of council. That I was asked specifically about what barriers are in place, and I mentioned there was a barrier at the federal level, and the mayor expressed appetite to work on that. So Yeah, Jim, if you want to share your slide and maybe your spreadsheet, I'll take that information and work with that and develop a bit of a briefing for the mayor and see what we can do. Because it is an issue on the street side, on the public side, as well as on the private side.
That's awesome. Thanks very much, Steve. That helps a lot.
A question?
Yep, please.
Well, it's a sort of suggestion. I just wonder if this would be for Estrada, right? Assuming that the people there are EV people, are a reasonably friendly bunch, would it be possible to say that we're having an inaccurate meter? Fine. We're not charging, but we request a donation. And this inaccurate meter would give you the suggested donation.
Yeah, that's been talked about, but the conclusion so far of the people I've talked to is that you're really bypassing Measurement Canada's rules. I mean, that's the intent of the legislation, and to bypass the intent you do at your risk. The other aspect it is that the infrastructure is already in place to charge by the kilowatt hour. So to do anything that intervenes manually means you're adding more cost, just trying to accomplish the same thing. So it's a great point, and it's a real sticking point for larger stratas particularly.
With the citywide charging, City of Victoria and the Saanich as well, on their stations, they all indicate you're only allowed to be there for, I think, 2 hours. And to me, that should, the city has no way of telling how long you've been there, although when you go and look at the meter, if it's a flow, it tells you how long you've been there and you can issue a ticket. So, I mean, that's one option for the city and the public.
I'm glad you raised that, Don, because I've had sort of a discussion with BC Hydro. They have a 40-minute rule on their DCFCs now. So any new DCFC that goes in has a 40-minute time limit on it. It's unenforceable, of course, but I pointed out to them that if you're in Vancouver and you want to go to Hope and you're on a 40-minute limit and you're not you have to leave short. So you have to stop somewhere else. So the analogy that I tried to draw was, why can't we trust our drivers? Because it's like going to a gas station and saying you can only have 6 gallons, irrespective of how much you may really need to meet your destination. I suggested to them that's not fair, and they said, well, it's because we don't have enough DCFCs. They said, well, why don't you go back to the root cause of the problem? You don't have enough DCFCs.
Yeah. Has their cost come down at all?
How do you mean the cost?
Well, for Hydro to put in, what's it cost Hydro to put in a DFC?
The rule of thumb is $1,000 a kilowatt hour. A kilowatt, sorry, kilowatt. So 100 unit would be $100,000.
Wow.
50s are still running 100,000 because of the hydro connections. Anyway.
Any other questions for Jim on this subject before we move along?
I have one.
Okay.
On your devices you can buy all over the place that will measure electricity, has anybody ever done a study just to see like how far off they are? I mean, are they really that far off that it makes any difference for the amount of electricity we're talking about? I mean, I've got a meter I can throw anything on this. What's up Pro meter? I mean, I use that all the time as a standard thing. Has anybody ever really calibrated them to find out, are they 5% off? Are they 10% off? Like, or is it more complicated because of?
Talking to a renowned expert earlier today, he indicated that the flow, sorry, I won't say manufacturers' names. The manufacturer names who produce the EVSEs, it's about maybe 3% off. And certainly you can get the units on the internet for $200. It measures it, and I don't know what the accuracy, it might be. I understand it's worse than that, 10 or 12, because you have to measure amps and volts. I won't go too technical. So the manufacturers today can deliver certainly within the 5%. But the problem is, we get back with Measurement Canada, you are prohibited from charging by the kilowatt hour unless you're 99.95. That's the nub of the problem.
Which is a bit of a joke because that's not even the case for gasoline delivery, because with thermal expansion and everything else, they can't be that accurate.
Absolutely. And parking meters are exempt. So
there you go. Okay. So it's a bureaucratic mafiosa that we have to deal with here.
Yeah.
I think they just can't, they're just not dealing with the innovation of L2 shared circuits. I mean, that originated in BC. It was invented in BC, L2 shared. And I guess they can't deal with it.
Yeah. I think the Glenn raised earlier is the response to this is to try to go to political route, and we've got to start contacting the ministers' offices as well as the local MLAs to put pressures on the ministers to have Measurement Canada become more reasonable on this, unless they want to frustrate the availability of the adoption of electric vehicles. It's that simple. If they want to promote electric vehicles, they have to promote and not make it more and more difficult for people to be able to put in charging infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's it's a big subject. It sounds like we got some bad policy going on here. So Jim, you're going to keep plugging away on this for us, right?
Yeah. Yep. Drafting letters.
Yeah, good man.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that. Great job, Jim, and thanks so much for contributing that today. That's really informative. Maybe we'll move along now.
And I just comment, John has left, but gasoline is checked, I don't know how frequently, but annually at least. And they adjust for temperature and they have a measured volume, and it's quite extensive. Looks like Glenn knows about it.
I remember those little spinny things on the side of the pump so it proved that the stuff was flowing. Remember those little spinny things in the glass ball? Anyway. That was
but there's a truck comes in and they've got a tank behind, and they pump gas, and they take that measurement from the pump and they compare it to a scientific measurement of what actually was pumped.
Yeah.
But the measurement is also based on temperature. So if you go in on a hot day, you're going to need a different amount of fuel than if you go in on a cold day, because the test is done on a basic temperature of something like 22 degrees Celsius or something like that. So
well, they have charged for expansion and contraction based on a mean temperature of 55 degrees because it's coming out of the ground.
Thank God I'm not buying gas. It sounds complicated. Anyway, shall we move on then? I think we've got an interesting tour. Are you prepared, James, to embark on your PV presentation and tour now?
Sure.
Just a good time? Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
No, works good.
Well, we're really looking forward to this. I just checked this morning, sunrise, sunset here, and where you're living there, Santa Clarita, outside LA, we get an hour and 26 minutes more sun today than you did, or sunrise, like daylight, than you do. But I see that you've got a whole bunch of suns in your forecast, like nothing but for the next 10 days. So
yeah, clouds are rare.
I think I have a neighbor who's getting a system almost the same kilowatt size as yours installed as we speak. I think next week they put the panels up, but his projected production for the year is, yours is 50% greater than his, same number of panels. Now, that's not for sure, but I'll have to check that out further. Anyway, just a little interesting point. You get a lot more sun. So take it away, James.
Hey, so thanks, Dave. So everyone, for those who don't know me, my name is James Locke. I'm president of the Victoria EV Club, Tesla Owners Club, and recently joined the board of the Tesla Owners Club of LA as well. So one of the biggest things since we got our first electric car, the Leaf, in Victoria in 2015 was wanting to go solar, but we've never owned a home to make that a reality until we got to California. Yeah, we always rented, so we didn't want to put the money into someone else's asset. So this year, as soon as we took ownership of our house, we immediately went on to Tesla Energy and booked their large system. So the way Tesla does this is they do a pre-configured systems. They have small, medium, large, and extra large. They're all preset, And they're all kind of like cookie cutter systems that make it very inexpensive for them to deploy. So the extra large, the large system we went with is the largest we could get on our roof. It has 36 panels and it came with 3 power walls. So let me give you a quick tour here. So it came with 3 power walls, but one of the referral prizes I was awarded several years ago was a Founders Series power wall. And because we're now in California, I could get it. So let me just swap my view here, if it wants to work. There we go. So here we go. So Model S still with Alberta plates. Model 3 has been moved over to California, and there's our 4 power walls. So all the power walls are technically the same, just one is a beautiful Tesla red, as you can see there. Sorry for the glare. These are actually online right now. We powered them up because they've been inspected. We cannot turn our solar on yet because the utility hasn't approved. But so we've got 52 kilowatt hours there, 54, 73 kilowatts in the 3 and 100 kilowatt hours in the S. So about 220 kilowatt hours of battery capacity in the garage. All this conduit was run by Tesla. So they did all this in basically less than 2 days, because they showed up about 7:30 and both days they were done by 2. They installed this backup load center, which has all of our main circuits. So they moved all these from the main board to here because our whole house is backed up by the power walls. The beautiful thing of 4 power walls is you can have 200 amps of draw. Well, technically you can get 30 amps per power wall, but they'll allow the full 200 amp load center. And then we've got the backup load center over here, and this has our breakers for each of the power walls. So you got the 4 power walls, you've got the solar circuit, and then the main for the whole solar energy system. And then we've got our inverter here. And that all runs up to our roof by a conduit. So if you guys want to go for a quick flight, I can get you on the drone and you can see our roof if you like.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, hold on a sec here.
Perfect.
So with all those batteries in your garage, aren't you afraid you're going to burn down the whole neighborhood because those things just spontaneously combust?
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, they're so dangerous, these Tesla batteries.
The serious question I have for you is, when you move back to Canada, are you going to be able to take the cover off that back?
No.
You can't just get a sheet of aluminum and take the red one with you?
Unfortunately, no. Okay, here. Okay, guys, let me share my screen here. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, let's go for a little flight. So they split our solar system across the front and rear of our roof. So 36 panels total. Now, as you can see, the bulk of it is on the other side of our roof. Yeah, Lisa's my air traffic control here. There you go. So as you can see, Tesla does a nice perimeter edging along the solar. So it almost looks like it's floating on the roof. See if I can get a better shot without hitting my drone on my roof. So they did a beautiful job. They did all that in a day.
James,
Yes.
are all those individually inverted, or is there one inverter down below?
Just the one inverter. Each has an optimizer on it. So that's how they prevent one panel from getting like something on it that disrupts the rest in the series. So they're optimized, but no inverters on each.
Okay, and that drops the price per panel, right?
Correct.
Right.
So I'll just land this sucker and then I can answer some more questions because I've got the pricing I'm happy to share with you guys on what they charge here in the US. But let me just focus on this drone for a sec here. There we go. Yeah, I know. Everyone gets vision of Lisa's feet there.
Are you south facing, or does that make any difference to these to the choice of roof or roof location?
So the backyard is north facing, and the front where the main panels are south facing. During the testing phase, because we haven't been able to turn these on yet. Hold on, I'm just going to turn off my drone. During the testing phase, we hit a peak of about 10 kilowatts around noon, and we held that for about an hour for the day, from just before noon till just after 1. So we're definitely going to generate more than we consume in a day. It looks like we can charge the 4 power walls in the day with our usage during the day as well. So we should be able to be net zero on this system. Our power bills here in California are about 250 to 300 plus US dollars a month. That's we have time-based power here. So in the winter, it's 13 cents a kilowatt hour. During shoulder times from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., it jumps up to 32 cents a kilowatt hour. And in the summer, that jumps up to 42 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's why we're doing this. I mean, we'll be able to pay the system off pretty quick that way. And then the other problem here in California is during the wildfire season, the utility can shut off power to prevent sparks for wildfires. So this whole system, you can get just solar. The solar system, fully installed, permitted, inspected, and everything, goes for about 26,000 US dollars here. You can also do a subscription service, which works out to about 150 to $200 a month. So it's still cheaper than power, and you're generating your own power. And then with the batteries it worked out to about $4,200 a battery here, a Tesla battery. So that's why we were like, well, we might as well get the batteries on top of the solar. All in, the system cost about $47,000, and we'll get a $12,000 federal rebate at the end of the year. I did talk to Tesla Energy because they're doing presentations to anyone who wants to listen in on this project and Tesla Energy's services. But as of right now, they do not have services in Canada. And I asked them when they are planning to be in Canada, and they couldn't give me a specific date, but they are extremely interested in opening that market up. Specifically, they definitely want to get the Tesla roof in all the markets as fast as they can. But they said the biggest problem is they have to become a roofing company on top of an energy company and an auto manufacturer. So they need to hire roofers and electricians, and it's just the time and energy of getting all that in place in all the different markets. So it's going to be the time consuming.
But you just added that to an existing roof, didn't you?
Right. This is the solar panels, yes.
Yeah.
The solar roof with the actual solar, the whole brand new roof from Tesla, that's kind of where they're focusing a lot of their efforts. But they didn't recommend it for our house because this house is only 2.5, 3 years old. So it didn't make sense to rip off a perfectly brand new roof. That would have added some added cost too, because they have to do all that.
James, do you know whether they have perfected the complete roof, like the tiles, or they're still experimenting?
They appears they have gotten much better at it. They're on version 3 of the Tesla roof, and I was talking to the installers because they've done some of them, and they said the wiring is very different for that because each one of those solar cells has to be wired into your attic, and then from there it's routed into the inverter down in the garage. So it's a lot more wiring. And watching them wire this, they were doing a ton of wiring for the entire house. So But it sounds like they're improving their processes and procedures for that to make it more efficient and more cost effective.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So does running all that wire, does that not negate the any savings they might have by not having inverters on each cell, like more common? A lot of the ones now are all individually inverted on the cells.
Well, from what I understand, they said they don't do that because of the added complexity and points of failure that can occur. I've got to look up the email because I asked them about that. And they said they found it was more efficient to run it off the one inverter in the garage versus inverters on each panel. They would know what their costs are to get these systems installed, and then they guarantee the system, the roof, they guarantee for 10 years for any leaks. The system's guaranteed for, I got to look on my, I think they said they guaranteed the panel's production to a certain known scale of it degraded for 30 years. I can't remember what the, yes, they will replace the panel if the efficiency is more than the predicted rate. And they monitor all of that real time as part of the install cost with no monthly fees. So I'm blown away that Tesla doesn't charge me some monthly fee for all this, but that's all included as well. So if we do have a panel problem or an optimizer problem, they just come and replace the panel.
What's the inverter for, please?
Pardon me?
What is the inverter? Is
The
that
inverter
going from DC to AC?
AC.
Correct. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. It goes from DC to AC and then AC to DC to get back into the battery. They don't.
If you're going into the power wall, why bother?
I believe it's something to do. Tesla's gotten really good at their efficiencies on their inverters. I can, if people are interested, I can get Jim to send out the specs from all this, or you can just check the Tesla website. I think their inverter efficiency is up around 97%. So there is very minimal loss on the conversion process. And I'm assuming it's more, again, it's the cost efficiencies to having it all integrated. It's all integrated into the power wall for that side of things. And you can just get the power walls without solar. So that way you could grid charge it at the cheaper rate and then use it during the peak period. I will add this, in the United States, we can't do that. Because we put solar on the roof, those power walls can never charge from the grid. They can only charge from solar. So you have to make sure your solar system's big enough to charge the battery capacity you have. I'm guessing that's the utilities making sure that I cannot make money by charging those suckers up at 13 cents and selling it at 42 every day of the year and running off my solar. I mean, you could just print money that way, so.
It seems your solar panels look a lot smaller than mine. How many kilowatt hour? What is the size per panel?
They're 315 kilowatts per panel. Watts, 315 watts per panel. Sorry, so wrong 11, units.
11 point some kilowatt.
11.34 kilowatt total.
Okay. That sounds okay.
Yeah, they aren't the biggest. They're from Q-Cell. These are not made by Tesla.
How big are they? They seem smaller in size, even so.
Yes, they're not big,
yeah. Yeah, quite nice. Yeah.
They are. It'll be interesting to see how they do in the higher temperatures, like at 37 degrees C with the sun on our roof. What are they going to produce?
Well, theoretically, they're supposed to get 11 point something kilowatts.
11.34,
and
yeah.
Last week we saw it peaking out at 9.1.
We saw 11.1 for a short period. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're nowhere near July 21st yet. And some of the panels are south facing and some are north facing. So at any time, you're just going to get sort of an average.
Yeah.
That's very nice. What are you doing for hot water? I mean, you must have take advantage of the sun and have some hot water production.
Yeah, you'd think, but it's amazing here. So this is basically a new house. Everything is gas. We have to slowly start transitioning off the gas. So we have a on-demand gas hot water. We have a gas stove and gas furnace up in the attic, and a gas dryer. So all that has to be converted over time. We wanted to get the solar in first, and then we're going to start slowly moving all the appliances as we can onto electric.
The first thing I did in Victoria is went outside and shut off the gas.
Did you?
I didn't want to blow up.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, let's just move out all that stuff. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I agree.
It's ironic that we we moved to California and now we have even more emissions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
The California houses have more emissions than in Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, amazing.
Sure.
Oh, well, you'll get there eventually.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So what are your walls 2x6s and R20s?
I believe so, yes.
So nothing better than that.
Insulation's pretty good here.
Yeah, they're really well insulated homes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, California was supposed to be introducing a requirement for all new home construction to have solar roofs. What's the status of that?
That I don't know. We asked the builder when we bought this house because he went through the house with us on inspection. And this house, being 2.5 years old, it does not have the conduit to the roof. We have a piece of conduit running on the outside of the house for our solar system. The only thing it has is a little piece of conduit into our garage from the main panel, which is outside in California. And it wasn't enough for either the Tesla high power wall connector we have or the solar inverter, because I mean, we're pulling 150 amps, so it needs some serious conduit and cable. He said the newer homes are starting to do conduit to the roof, but I mean, he said that just came into effect. I think he said in the last year. So, but there's new homes going in and they still don't have solar on the roof. It's mind blowing how little solar there is out here on these homes.
Maybe it's, I think it takes effect first of 2021, so
Okay.
in the next year, I think, but not sure.
The one thing that we're concerned about, because we've been obviously listening to California news, is the governor announced they're canceling all their green energy initiatives because of their budget shortfall. So they're not buying any EVs for the government fleet. They're canceling all programs. So that, I can't believe that's the first thing California cut, was all their green energy initiatives, which is concerning. Not that we can vote right now, but it's something I wasn't expecting in California. So we'll have to see where this goes, because I think they have an enormous budget shortfall here right now. Because
so one question I have are, I mean, besides Tesla, did you look at other solar roof manufacturers?
providers? No, I'm a huge supporter of Tesla. I want them to use that money to keep doing what they're doing to push the industry forward.
The prices are pretty competitive.
Yeah, but we did do a really quick scan. Like, I didn't get quotes from anyone else, but the prices were competitive.
Well, did they even have batteries?
No, and they had other batteries, and my line of thinking was, why would I get a third party to install a Tesla Powerwall when I could buy it right from Tesla and have them support it directly? So
Yeah, I know, but I mean, in Vancouver, we're not, Tesla's not an option. Is that
exactly,
right?
exactly. You can't. You have to use a third party. Yeah, for sure.
James?
I do know Tesla is coming to Canada to do direct to the consumer with energy, but no timeline on that yet.
James? David here. Can you monitor your system at home, or does Tesla monitor your system?
Yeah, we can monitor it. Here, let me, so I'm sure you guys have all seen the app, and
It's a very nice app.
it's a very nice app with lots of data and information to share. I'll just do it this way rather than, oops. So you can see like that's the real time what our power walls hold. The solar is not active right now, but I mean, you can see the power flow. And so if there was solar and batteries, we can see how energy is flowing and historical information. And it's lifetime, year, month, week, and day. So we can see precise information. I cannot monitor each individual solar cell and what it's producing, but Tesla does. So they are watching the trends for each cell. And I'm working on a little project to see if I can get at that data, because I know it's there, I just can't see it, and see if I can pull the data from each cell and then monitor that myself as well.
That is a difference. We can monitor each one, but each panel has its own inverter.
Microinverter,
So
yeah.
Our monitoring system shows everyone, and if one of them stops producing, you know exactly which one is problematic.
That's nice. That's nice that they have that. They must be able to do that because I'm guessing they can monitor the optimizer that's on each panel, same as a microinverter, in terms of having something individual to each panel to monitor. So
yep.
I don't know. I didn't dig into it with them, but I'm going to do some more digging myself to see what I can see as a consumer.
As long as Tesla's monitoring it, they'll probably know before you know.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah. No problem.
There are rumors out that the Cybertruck will be able to work two ways, grid charge and discharge. Is there any truth to that?
There are some rumors circulating about the 3 and the Y being able to do that as well soon. So I think, I don't know, the last time, I'm sure you guys saw that, the last time JB Straubel talked about that, he said it's just the regulation in all the different districts that causes the biggest problem for Tesla to meet all the different regulations to do vehicle to grid. And it's the battery chemistry as well. But as Tesla gets to their 1 million mile battery, which I'm guessing Glenn is going to be talking about when he gets into the battery day conversation, that will probably change things as well. It's going to be interesting to see because the Cybertruck battery is going to be in a very large battery that you could run off your home in an emergency or your neighborhood in the emergency.
And also, do you know when we will be at safe self-driving? Do you know any time frame for that?
We're hoping by the time Mitchell gets a driver's license.
Yeah, which is like next year. I figure I figure based on what I'm seeing here, I figure feature complete by the end of the year, assuming COVID-19 and the data analysis doesn't slow them down a few months. But I mean, as everyone says, regulation and insurance, that's another question in each area. But once they prove through the March of Nines that it's safer than a human, I don't think it'll take long for insurance companies to start making it expensive to drive by hand.
Thank you.
Fred, I will say this, in the US, they are stopping at traffic lights and stop signs now. And Canada's supposed to get that. I figure within the next 2 weeks, everyone in Canada will have that feature release. And then we'll see how quickly they iterate on that.
That's just version 3, right?
Yeah, you have to have hardware 3, FSD computer for that.
What is the reservation rate now? Is it up to 800,000? Do you know, or is it still 700? Or
I don't know. That I don't know. They are counting. It's for the Cybertruck and stuff.
I think it's around 800 now.
For all the different vehicles, yeah.
I'm number 160,000. So
for your Cybertruck?
Yeah. So that's a pretty good number, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be.
Quick question for.
Go ahead.
Quick question for James to do with your February 2017 Tesla Model S AT, and you thought you were going to get a hardware 3 upgrade, and it hasn't happened yet. They pushed you back. Have you heard anything more about your hardware 3 upgrade?
They said I'm now approved for it, but now they're waiting on parts. They said check back in a couple months. I'm going to wait a couple weeks. I'm not waiting 2 months. So in a couple weeks, I'll check in with them again and see if they've got the parts in. What's really strange is people in Calgary are getting their FSD upgrades in their AP2 cars and 2.5. No, sorry, 2.5 cars. I take that back.
Yeah.
The 2 cars, I did get someone to finally, it's not parts per se, it's the engineering documentation for the procedure to swap it out because it's different obviously in an AP2, and it does require one new harness I think they need to make the swap. So as soon as I know, you'll see it on Twitter, and then I'm happy to share whatever I can find out.
Yeah, if you'd send me an email, let's start up here in Vancouver, North Vancouver. And I've got a February 2017 build an AP2 car, and I've been talking to the guys about trying to get something happening there.
Yeah, you and me. I'm a February build 2017 as well. So.
Yeah, and apparently it's something to do with black and white cameras on the side and a few other things.
Interesting.
The wiring harness apparently isn't redundant. There's a different wiring harness involved. That's what I've been told, a different wiring harness. Anyway, thank you.
No problem.
What's the actual battery inside the Powerwall? How does it compare to, say, a Model S?
It's the same 18650 cells. No, wait, is it?
I don't really know.
I don't remember. I thought I knew that, but I do know they're 13.5 kilowatt hours storage per Powerwall. Same cell design. I got to look that up if it's 18650 or the Model 3 cells, but it's the same cell with a different chemistry.
I'm just looking at it like those are relatively small, and you could fit 2 of them in a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one last thing. You know the Tesla rewards? I was supposed to get a Powerwall as my reward, and they took that away from me when they canceled all the rewards in BC. How did you get your reward Powerwall?
Before BC did that, we moved to Alberta officially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. but then we moved to California. So, you know what, Bruce? I mean, I wonder if you could. Yeah, I don't know if there's any way around that. On that front, if you guys want to do something about that, there is interest on the Tesla side to push back, but they need owners to push to get that law in BC reevaluated. And I do know Tesla would support the owners pushing to get that looked at.
Yeah, the vehicle sales authority doesn't want to push for that because the vehicle sales authority is sponsored, for lack of a better term, by the new car dealers of BC. And the new car dealers of BC are having a very, very seriously bad time right now with this COVID-19. I mean, most of the dealerships are down to one salesperson and a sales manager. Massive layoffs.
Yeah, I can see that. With Hertz declaring bankruptcy, that's going to hurt all the OEMs too. I mean, think of all the cars that are purchased via all the rental car companies and travel, and it's going to hurt them for a very long time.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So what was it that BC did that affects the power walls? I'm not familiar with that.
It's not the power walls
what
directly,
happened?
it's the portals.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, James. Once upon a time, as a Viva member, or not, sorry, once upon a time as a Tesla owner, I could give rewards to somebody, and if I gave somebody rewards, I got a reward back. And if you gave the first award to somebody else who could buy a Tesla car and they bought a Tesla Model S or a Model X, they would get something and you would get something. And in the early days, to really encourage people to do this, you could get all sorts of really interesting things. You could get Tesla wall adapters for free. You could even get a small Tesla ride-along car for the kids, and you could also get a Powerwall. But the Powerwalls kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And finally, what happened was the Vehicle Sales Authority, which licenses all of the people that sell cars in BC, passed a ruling that if I would get an award from Tesla because I recommended somebody buy a car, that was like a salesperson getting a commission. And because I didn't have a Vehicle Sales Authority license, I could no longer get that commission in BC. So any Tesla owners in BC that gave a referral code to another person that bought a Tesla, as of July of 2018, would no longer get a credit for that, and they wouldn't be able to get an award. Vehicle Sales Authority was the people that did that. Those are the people that license all car dealers in BC. Car license costs about $100 a year for you to sell cars in BC.
Yeah, our club used to get $350 per referral. Or
Hey, I hate to jump in here and tell you, but a car dealer license costs many, many, many thousands. It's not $100 a year. Just throwing that out there.
I was talking about the salesperson license as opposed to the car dealer license.
Well, that was all something brought in, but with legislation about 4 years ago by the Libs, was it not, to so-called make professionalized car selling?
Yes, you know, $250,000 a year donation from the Liberal Party of BC to the new car dealers of BC to the Liberal Party of BC buys a lot of influence.
You betcha. You betcha. I can't understand why the New Democrats have continued that. It just boggles my mind.
But anyway, we as owners could do something if you guys want to. Let me know. I mean, feel free to reach out to me on any media you want, and we can work on that as a group. And I know all the Tesla owners clubs across Canada will want to help us on that, because they all recognize that it's not fair that in BC, it's the only place in Canada that you can't get a referral prize. So it's a little targeted in BC.
That's great, James. Thanks for this. If before we move on to Jim Stannon, who I hope is still patiently waiting for us, perhaps any more questions for James about important EV stuff?
Just on that, James, if you wish, maybe it'd be helpful if Tesla actually put something into BC. Manufacturing wise, research wise, whatever else, because we're by far, I guess, their biggest market in Canada, I would think. and all they do is sell vehicles here with very little distribution.
Actually, they did actually through the, what's the name of the company in Canada they bought, guys? I'm throwing they bought a,
What, the battery company?
yeah.
Battery company. The
What is
battery,
it?
Maxell.
no, it wasn't Maxell. It was a different one. There's a
Yeah,
battery
not the
company out
Maxwell,
of.
the other one. It's in
No, this
BC
is
and
the
they're
one out of
hiring.
East. What's in BC? Is it okay?
It's called
They have-
High Bar.
That's it.
Oh,
High Bar.
yeah.
High Bar Systems.
High Bar Systems,
yeah.
and they're hiring in Vancouver, and they're ramping up hiring in BC for that division of Tesla.
Yeah,
But anyway,
I guess
thanks,
if you
guys,
lived
and
in
we
Eastern Canada in the snow, you'd probably want to move to BC to work for High Bar Systems, or maybe even California.
It's all yours, Dave, to pass it along. Thanks, everyone.
That's great. No hurry, but I guess it's time now for our guest from Salt Spring Island.
Hey, how's
Just a little
everybody
pond.
doing? I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and it's great to connect for sure.
Yeah, it's awfully good to have you. Thanks for coming, and so take it away.
Okay. I live on an island. It's a little bit different. We have kind of an eco mentality here, I guess kind of famous for it. And we also have a passion for, I guess, addressing the environmental issues as much as we can. So our current count is about 265 electric vehicles over a population of about 10,500 people. We think that's the highest density in North America. We would love somebody to beat us. I think that would be fantastic. But it's an interesting environment. And so I was approached to sort of talk about what it's like right now here, sort of like the tourism type thing. We've lost one of our ferries, the ferry that goes from Fulford to Vancouver. The other ferries are running at half capacity, so they only load half as many cars. And I think they've dropped a few runs. And so you might go down the ferry dock and there's cars lined up and you think everything's normal, but no, it isn't. It's quite quiet on the island. If you were going to come here, you'd probably want to stay in a hotel. They are barely operational. I don't know about the B&Bs. If you came here and you know, maybe did a day trip, you probably might want to go to the famous Saturday market, which is not operational. You might want to come out and do an eco tour, you know, do the whale thing or something like that. Those aren't in operation. You know, might want to go to a restaurant. Well, they're basically doing takeout. So other than we're a very rural district with very few roads, there's not a lot of road traffic actually, and there are not a lot of people coming to the island. I checked out the Salt Spring Inn yesterday, and their monthly booking thing for their rooms had 2 guests for the month, and generally in May they would be full out. So the COVID thing has really hit our tourism extremely hard. We're really focusing on more local people doing local things, and we'll see how that works out. But if you want to test your autopilot, it's actually a pretty good time. Not a lot of cars around if you're nervous about that. Another odd thing about Salt Spring is we don't have a lot of center lines printed on the road, which does give the autopilot a little bit of, you don't get the little circle, says it's okay to do it. So a couple of things, I guess we put out some homework of a document that showed a lot of things that have gone on. I've been involved for about 6 or 7 years. We're a very informal group here. I have 11 volunteers. We've put in 11 charging stations, all free, all level 2, sprinkled around the island. Our biggest challenges are buildings that don't have enough electricity that you can turn on another heater and the fuse goes, right? So we have a lot of dated infrastructure, and that's been a problem for community halls especially. But still, we've gotten the 11 chargers in, And our concept was very similar to Kent Rathwell's: build the infrastructure and they will come. Followed by build the infrastructure and immediately talk about it. So we try to keep the conversation going by having articles in the paper, articles on our online version of newspapers, the Salt Spring Exchange. And when your neighbor's got an electric vehicle and your other neighbor's got an electric vehicle, things start to kind of happen and you end up with an electric vehicle. So we've also been pressuring our local government officials to all drive electric, and we've gotten 2 out of 4. And we think that's a very good thing, so that if they're driving electric, that's another sort of leverage point. We'd love to have a level 3 charger here to support commercial deliveries, taxis, the pizzas, that kind of stuff. Level 2 is just not going to work for them. And so that's a priority for us. We're very informal, but we do try to get together and drink beer and talk about stuff. So, and I guess maybe another thing that was interesting is this little booklet that we designed for kids, 20 pages of things to do with the environment, why you should drive an electric car on Salt Spring, this sort of thing. And that's been a real fun thing. We're into our 3rd printing. I'd love to see this used elsewhere in BC. I'm not too sure how to do that, but it's been really well received. We try to get it into schools if we can, and that sort of thing. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I don't know if anybody has any sort of interest about what's going on in Salt Spring. I will mention one other thing. About 10 years ago, we had a bike conference called Velo Village on Salt Spring, and it lined up with it was the World Velo Conference. It was in Vancouver, but we put on a rural one here, and it was the week leading up to it. And we initiated that by renting a ferry from BC Ferries, and we filled it full of bikes, and we put a rock band in the middle, and we drove around a little bit from Sydney to Fulford, and then there was sort of a bike thing that took you up in town. And I've been itching for a long time. In fact, in part of Revolutions, I did explore a devoted ferry coming from Vancouver to Salt Spring. You can rent these things. They can go wherever you want. We have one of the largest ferry systems in the world, and we have all these interesting islands in the Gulf that would be could become a really major event. Maybe not led by me, because Revolutions was a huge amount of work, but it could be all Teslas, or it could be all EVs, and it could be a very newsworthy event. It would be wonderful if it was an electric ferry, and we're getting these sort of, partial electric ferries coming around the corner, but it'd be interesting to sort of connect with them. So I didn't want to sort of leave that, because there's a lot of people out there that might be the kind of people that might want to say, hey, this really makes sense to kind of sit down and talk about it. I think it'd take maybe a year to 2 years to sort of plan maybe a set of events around here. But anyway, just some thoughts. So anyways, anybody have any questions?
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Glenn here. Have you talked to BC Hydro about getting a level 3 on the island? And do you have a contact there?
No, we don't. Well, actually, I would say not recently. We had contacts maybe a year or two ago, and basically COVID has kind of shut down everything for us right now. We have charger maintenance because our chargers are wearing out, the ones and stuff like that. I can't read that. Glenn, is it possible for you to—
I'll put it into a chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it into a chat for you. And BC Ferries right now, they've been kind of coy about coming out to talk to us. We'd asked them to come out to talk about their electric fleet and how they're going to get to 0 GHGs in the future. And they passed. So, yeah, that was a bit of a pain.
So, Jim.
Yes.
Just by the rule of thumb, the consensus is centering around there should be a DCFC for every 200 EVs.
Ah, nice to know.
So the government's aware of that sort of consensus. So You're sort of entitled.
Yeah, we also have the biggest hydro thing for all of the Gulf Islands. You know, we're sort of the center one, so we have the biggest hospital, the biggest RCMP detachment. We have the biggest high school.
Yeah.
We have the high school, I guess.
Sorry, did I say one or two? 1 per 200. It's actually 1 per 100. Did I say that right? I can't remember. Sorry. It's 1 per 100.
Yeah, we've gone past that. We did a good celebration at number 100, a good celebration at number 200. I don't know what we'll do for number 300, but maybe it'll be a VEVC charger. So, anything else?
How many of those?
With the DFC charger, oh, go ahead.
How many of those cars that you've got over there will charge on DC fast charging?
We got a lot of Leafs with the big round button there. Lots of Teslas over here. You know, we have a few conversions. We have a few like Sparks, and I think that's what it's called. Some little ones, but we're basically almost a Leaf and Tesla zone, I would say. So I'd say the bulk of them. I think we're over 50% Leafs, and I have to say a lot of them came from Motorized Auto Direct, who has been wonderful in supporting us over here. They've, you know, come over and you know, it was Cam and Julian that was giving talks here for us a couple of years ago, and they came over for the Kent Rathwell presentation when he was here, and we actually did a buffet breakfast for all the business owners here to sort of say, you should be buying electric cars and here's why. And so we had an auto dealer here, plus, well, in addition to Motorized, at the time, the taxi was driving an electric car, but he kind of stuffed it into the bush and broke it. And he hasn't got another one, but we had some real customer experience, right? And we did an exit survey from that. Anytime we do anything like an EV 101 class or something like that, we have an exit survey to determine what worked and what didn't, what can we do better next time. And that was really valuable in determining how that was pretty successful. I have to say nobody bought an electric car after that, like business owners. So I have to think if we might be able to put that on again, but having the level 3 charger would be really helpful, I think. So
if you keep your eye on provincial announcements, they are planning to launch a DC fast charger funding incentive, probably June or July. So, so that's it may be a good fit for Salt Spring because it's meant to kind of address the gap in current DC fast funding incentives, which are really around building the transportation network arterials, and obviously there's a need for DC fast chargers that are non-corridor focused. So this is exactly what the provincial program will be looking to address.
Great, thanks for that, Steve Y. I have a person who's sort of my charger person, approaches people, sort of says, what can we do? We try to give people money when they put in chargers. We've got a pool of resources that we can use for that sort of thing. So we kind of bribe people, at least to get the conversation going. People say, you know, I have some money, would you like to talk? And you get to keep the money. That really sort of helps sort of grease the wheels. So that would be really good. So I'll let my charger person, Barbara Dempster, know about that. I'm sort of the the guy at the top, so there's a lot of things I don't know, but I push a lot. So gently.
I was just wondering if there's any limitations in respect to the capacity of the service on the island towards installing a fast charger, because they take a lot of capacity, a lot of amp capacity, and take off more than a couple of streets likely of occupants. So there may be the hydro heads there. I don't know.
That's a really good question, but we have these big cables that run over Sansom Narrows to the island, right down to the hydro building, and then distributed around the island. And then I think it goes out to maybe Pender, Saturna, and stuff like that. Like, I don't know for sure, but these are really, really big cables. So I think we're in pretty good shape there.
Okay, good, thanks.
And Jim, I sent you those that contact info for Mike Wenslav.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I've highlighted it. I'll do a cut and paste after this is done so I don't blow out my connection here.
Just Bruce out here, just thank you very much for the excellent event that you hosted about 2 years ago. That was the event on Spring Island, which I thoroughly enjoyed attending. I'm just hoping you're going to be doing it again.
Well, I don't know. I must have had 50 or 60 volunteers to make that event go on. I worked for a university for 30 years, and I have never worked so hard as the 6 months leading up to that event. And my 11 volunteers were like, I don't know, like ghosts. We were working so hard to make it work. And, you know, I think we kind of brought it off. I was very pleased about the conversation circles and the events, the education, you know, sessions that we had. It also backed up with a couple other local events, which was really kind of nice because I already rented the place so they could come in and do some things. You know, it's amazing how much effort something like that takes. Which is, you know, I have something, the way I describe that event is never again. But it doesn't mean that we can't do something similar. There's so many groups that want to do things and they always want to have the electric cars involved. And so I just think we could do something on a North American newsy scale if we thought about it and did enough work. But you've got to have some serious people that are committed to this project to make it happen. And I'm not too sure if my volunteers are going to be volunteers again for the next one. So, you know, but don't forget that ferry idea. That's it. That one really captivates me. So anyway.
I have a question about your booklet.
Yeah.
Is that available online for people to see?
Well, you know, it doesn't translate well as a PDF because these are pages, one page, next page, next page. So, and these are designed to face one another, right? So it is in a PDF form. We own all the rights to this, you know, by the way, I've got some nice sponsors back here. I could share it with you if you look at it and don't do anything with it, but because I'd really like to see how it could be sent out. I've had this concept for a long time that, you know, the biggest advocate for an electric car is the guy who just bought one. He drives it home and his neighbors talk to him like, why did you buy that? You know, da-da-da, kick the tires, that sort of thing. So I think every dealer, if they gave out 2 of these with some sort of coupon in it, that said you can have free car wash or something like that. So it has some sort of residual value when you give it to somebody. It's worth $10 or something like that. I think these days, and especially with car dealerships, it was mentioned before how they're in such dire straits these days, and that's absolutely true. It is really tough out there. There are not a lot of people going out to car dealerships and buying cars. They are in deferral mode. So this might be the best time to come up with something that no other car dealer is doing that would help them facilitate their business and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind my artist getting a little bit of some money if it's used on a broader scale than just Salt Spring, but other than that, that would be really minimal. So essentially no money involved. This is our killer whales, by the way, that I see go by the coast, which is really kind of fun. And we've got our ferry doors, which are famous on Salt Spring in there. So anyways, they're cool. Anyway, so yeah.
I just sent you a private message explaining a little bit about how we might want to at least help people understand that this information exists through a community initiative that we have in our area that is not EV specific, but is very sensitive to environmental issues and stuff. And perhaps we can exchange some communication to see if it fits with what you're talking about.
Sure, let's see what we can do. I'm retired. This is what I do full time. Okay. Things are happening here. Yeah, as I said, I'm retired. This is all I do. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do cook and walk the dog, and I'm a pod leader for emergency services. Other than that, this is my main shtick, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Dog.
That's
I think
great.
we're good.
Well, perhaps so. Do we have any more questions for Jim or comments about what's up on the island? I guess that sounds like we're coming to a close here with your segment there, Jim.
Actually, I'll mention one more thing.
Yes, please.
I did post in that thing our website, ssiev.ca. I write a monthly column in the newspaper. I'm just running close to my 1-year anniversary article, but all those articles are available online. Freely take them, use them for whatever you want. Again, that comes back to my theory about keep the conversation going. And okay, now I'm done, David. Thank you.
That's awesome. I think keeping the conversation going is what it's all about. And COVID, oddly enough, with these Zoom meetings has broadened our contact. We were in Saskatchewan, then we have the Vancouver folks and James down there in California. So in an odd way, that's actually opening some connections. So thank you again very much, Jim. Awesome stuff. Keep it up. And we'll have to keep that fair. I like that ferry idea a lot. And we could maybe keep in, I stir up some interest here over that now. So take care. At this point, I'd like to then also, I don't think I thanked James and Lisa enough there. So when we signed off with those guys, that was awesome little tour. And James, it was a nice piloting there with Lisa doing traffic control. And it's good. We've had, I think, a pretty informative meeting here. I got scratched a lot of notes, but I think now we've got Glenn Gary in the wings, if he's still with us. Hasn't fallen asleep or anything. You still there, Glenn? So we have some battery stuff, but before your thing, Glenn, starts, I'd like to mention that now that I realize Julian Sale is online, it was good news about your son Rowan there, Julian. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so
he got to my house yesterday. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, so good on you, and that's great with Rowan. I just thought I'd mention that quick because there were quite a few people on another time, and Rowan was talked about a little bit. So he's famous.
Well, famous for all the wrong reasons, but
well,
yeah, he's on the road to recovery, and that he really appreciates all the support. Do a little video in the next day.
Yeah, awesome. So that was good. Yeah,
he's a good speaker.
He is. He's
cool. Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Right on. So take care. And Glenn, then sorry, back to you now. We would like to hear what you've got to say about batteries.
All right.
Apparently.
So it's been an interesting couple of weeks in the whole battery space. A lot of different news is coming up. The people on the Tesla side know we're past due for the Tesla Battery Day, and there's been a ton of hints and a lot more speculation given about exactly what that's going to be. GM had a little bit going on, and then part of the homework we put into this into the notice for this meeting was what I thought was probably the best handyman's Battery 101. What does it take to build or to conceive and then bring batteries to commercial use? So I'm going to kind of briefly go over top all three of those. It's not going to be exhaustive, but I'll launch into it. So Tesla Battery Day, we are late. It's supposed to happen sometime in this month or perhaps next month. Elon's keeping that fairly close to his chest. A lot of different things out there about possibly being able to build batteries quicker, cheaper, longer ranged. And much of that speculation is from the acquisition of the two companies we talked about a bit earlier, Highbar and Maxwell. And a lot of this is kind of going beyond what Panasonic has done for Tesla so far. Doesn't mean Panasonic is out the door. They're still, very much into the building of the 18650 and the 2170 batteries. And that'll probably carry on for a lot of different uses. We all know that Tesla in China has gone to a prismatic battery that might actually be a lithium phosphate battery in the standard range Tesla Model 3. And that's because the volumetric density of LiFePO for those is somewhat greater than lithium ion. So it takes up more room for that 50 kilowatts. But the 50 kilowatt battery space in the Model 3, for lithium ion, it's 75 kilowatts. So there's a whole lot of different space there that they can put that in. So that's kind of happening with CATL in China. But back to what the battery day is happening here in North America. When you get Highbar and Maxwell involved in the manufacturing of batteries, Maxwell were very much onto the getting into dry electrolyte in the battery, okay? And when you go to a dry electrolyte, you're taking volume, you're taking a lot of other materials out of the battery, so it leaves you more space in the battery for active material. So, that dry electrolyte coating process would, potentially save time because you don't have to dry it after it's in there. Energy for the production there, and materials and weight. Right now, if Tesla's producing battery packs somewhere around $120 US at the pack level per kilowatt, give or take 10 bucks. With a wet electrolyte going to a dry with all those advantages in the production process, potentially that takes them below the $100 per kilowatt at the pack level. That is supposed to be the crossover point of the battery pack having the same sort of price for production as an internal combustion engine. So that hits the market at that price level, dropping the price of even a Model 3 standard range by another 20%. That makes it very viable. So that'll be a huge thing there on just the price level. Then they talk about the 1,000,000-mile battery. So what determines the length of a battery's life is how many cycles it has. And every cycle, as you charge from full to empty, take it out, creates a certain amount of stress at the microscopic level. If your process is, and that's done over like 2,000 cycle, 2,000 cycles, lifetime cycles, up and down. And that gives you your life of the battery. And as the insides start to break down, you form dendrites, which then can form an internal short in the battery. So that's why getting to a 1,000,000-mile battery means you want to have a process that makes that thermal stress much less impact on it to get you out to 1,000,000 miles. I think James will probably confirm that Tesla says that the current battery packs we have in our cars is good for 500,000 miles. So getting out to 1,000,000 miles means that you've done something different in the process, and it'll keep those things in service for a very long time. Now, the average consumer does not need a 1,000,000-mile battery at all. Who do need it, though, are transportation as a service industries, taxis, Ubers, or robo-taxis, perhaps, and vehicles that are on the road all day, every day. Okay, in the commercial side. So that's what's important there. Right. So that's kind of looking at what could come up at battery day. So longer life, more range for a given volumetric space in the battery, because you've taken things you don't need in there anymore. Cheaper, all those things combined could be, what they're going to announce. But we won't know until they actually say it. GM last week also turned around and broke ground for their Lordstown, Ohio facility for their Ultium battery, which is, they talk a whole lot about it, and how you can put as many modules as you need for the vehicle you're designing the battery for, how those modules can be swapped in, swapped out, how if down the road you've got a bad module, you can swap in a current technology module, and that new module will act just like all the old ones, because each module has its own sort of a battery management system in it. All those things are well and good. And it's kind of kudos for GM to do this. They say it's going to be a 30 gigawatt hour a year site. So that's kind of on the range of what the current Tesla Nevada Gigafactory produces annually. And they've put about $2.3 billion into that with LG Chem as their partner. So that, among the big three in North America, is the first real indication of one of them getting serious about building cars. 30 gigawatts a year, that won't be, that won't even be 10% of the number of legacy internal combustion engine cars they produce each year, but it's their first serious start. So that's good to see, and good to push that ahead. Any questions on those 2 points up front before I talk about the video? All right. So the other one was a video hosted by Transport Evolved, and it's called Solid State Breakthrough Batteries. Here's what you need to know. And what they have on there is a doctor who's an electrochemist, Ewan McTurk from Plug Life TV. And it talks a whole lot more about batteries in general than just solid state in particular. A lot about the basics of lithium ion batteries, about dendrite formation, all that good stuff, electrolyte degradation, and how battery management systems in cars that are on the road tend to keep the individual stress on the batteries very low. Okay, but the batteries are maybe only stressed to 45 to 50% of their maximum capacity all the time, because you're looking for that long life in the battery as it goes down the road, as opposed to phones, where the different companies have tried to get the very max out of them, to the point that one manufacturer had them blowing up on them. And that was strictly asking too much from the battery, way too much in, way too much out, and putting all that stress onto it. Car batteries aren't built that way. They're meant to be safe. So yeah, I really encourage watching that whole video. Talked about Dr. J.B. Goodenough and his associate Helena Braga, and they're looking into kind of a glass electrolytic battery sets. Solid state, remove the liquid and separator. Again, going on to less material in the battery, less costly material in the battery, less weight, denser battery, all that good stuff, and very dendrite resistant. There's some good discussion on there about talking about gravimetric density, watt hours per kilogram, or volumetric, watt hours per liter. Okay, those are different things. Cars are mainly designed for volumetric efficiency, space in the car. If you get into things like aircraft, weight is more important than space. Okay, so that is really cool. One of the things that kind of gives you a little bit of a spit take as you're listening to the discussion on batteries as they've come along. We know cobalt is one of the ingredients added to lithium-ion batteries, and they're always added in there to try and keep internal shorts of the battery happening. It's there to kind of protect the anode. And what Jeff Dawn and his team, who work now for Tesla, and he's from Dalhousie, they kind of went through all their processes. They were doing their testing, and they kind of went, okay, well, if we do this, we should see this result. And instead they got this result, and they went, why is that? And they backed up the process, went back through testing again, and they may have discovered that cobalt may not be needed at all. That kind of makes you go, huh, interesting. So that could be part of the battery day thing as well. We're dumping cobalt entirely. Who knows? So that was very interesting. Oh, and one of the other things, they kind of talked around the whole issue. When you start looking at the media, you look at things that are announced on TV, you hear all sorts of, here's the latest and greatest battery thing that's happening. And this will revolutionize everything. So I kind of broke it down into technology stages, and it kind of goes from like step one, you have a reasonably good idea based with a good theory. Step two, you do a proof of concept. So what you're essentially making are one layer thick batteries, kind of like what you see in your nice fancy watches. Okay, little coin batteries. You do that, you test those for a while, and you might test those to 100 cycles, top to bottom, and see what sort of efficiency, what sort of power you get out of that. And if that all goes well, then at that time, generally, you'll produce a paper. And the paper's out there to your peers in the industry and in academia saying, here's what we've seen so far. And the peers hopefully come along and give them some good feedback. They then go from that, they go to testing to destruction, where you might take things to 1,000 cycles or figure out where along that path the batteries fail. And then you try and look at in what modes they did fail. How did they fail and why did they fail in those modes? So you go through that. Step four, you need some serious money. Okay, so somebody comes along, either a sovereign wealth fund like Saudi Arabia, or Tesla shows up, or Toyota comes in and they start throwing money at you. And that's where you can start to get more people on the payroll looking at different paths to do the development. You might even start at some low production numbers to see if you can produce this in enough numbers that you might have an idea of the economics of it at the end. Let's move this over a bit here. Yeah. And then once you get that money and you're working everything, you're going into production development. Can you make this work? Can you start getting suppliers for everything you need? And you go to step 6, you go into the longer range cost estimates. Okay, you now think you're getting some providers, you're starting to get an idea of how much space you need, how many people you need, where can you draw all these resources in and into a serious plan. And if you do all that and you know you can get it into a car and it's going to survive for the amount of time you need it, The last step is you have a commercial product that's ready to be put into an EV. Now, all those steps can take 15 to 20 years, depending on how much importance is being put on it. Prior to 2010, there was very little importance. So stuff that J.B. Goodenough was doing in the 80s and 90s weren't being picked up by people until the early 2000s. Or, yeah, actually maybe late 90s. Now, the world knows we need to go down this road. Money is being thrown at this in serious ways. So that timeline can be shortened dramatically, maybe by half. So things to look at down the road. Sodium ion batteries, they're 30% cheaper, and you can also fully charge them to 100% and then discharge them to 0. So you can ship those things around the world as inert things at a 0 charge. Lithium ion, you can't, and there's a lot of different safety requirements. So they end up going by ship. But 30% cheaper. If you've got the space, 30% cheaper is, you know, you can get down into maybe a $25,000 car that'll take somebody 200 miles. That would be great for a lot of the emerging world. Lithium sulfur. They have the same volumetric density as lithium ion, but much better on the gravimetric. So that might be the way going forward for aviation. Right now, aviation is considered possible once you get more than 400 watts per liter. And 400 watt hours per liter. And with these, we might get into 500. So that's pretty good. All that to say, it's about a 1 hour long discussion. Well worth looking at. And the bonus is at the end of that, that same professor, Ewan McTurk, also puts in a plug for, he's got a 3 episode short 9 or 10 minute videos of looking at renewable energy, electric vehicles, and the grid in the UK, and how his calculations show every one of the 31.3 million cars in the UK could be electric today. Very cool stuff. That's all I got, probably more than enough. Over to you, Jim.
If I could just add one comment, another thing that might come up on Battery Investment Day, given power walls and semis that probably need a lot of batteries and stuff like that, is maybe the announcement of another factory to, you know, as we see that Tesla is expanding everywhere, but I think batteries have been a bit of a bottleneck in the past, and if you're expanding and you got a bottleneck, I don't know, maybe you could use a factory in BC or Texas or California.
You're right, Jim, and I think 2 or 3 quarters ago, Musk said essentially, you know, we want to do semi, we want to do Cybertruck, we want to do Roadster, we want to do a whole lot more Wise, and we want to do a whole lot more storage. Right now, we're battery constrained. That was the uptake of that. We probably will see an announcement very soon about a new gigafactory, or a terafactory rather, in Texas, and likely Austin. So so if that comes along and they've worked with Maxwell and Highbar, and they can produce, say, at 10% more batteries daily that have 30% more capacity for 30% less cost, then individual units go down, but your utility goes up, your costs go down, your sales go up. And it's just all these great knock-on effects. But yeah, you're right. You know, we're going to see some interesting stuff come up. That's for sure.
I have some updates on that if you guys want to hear it.
Oh yeah.
So the location of the new Terafactory, Gigafactory, I hear will be announced within the next 3 weeks. No hints to location other than Elon saying Nevada or Texas, but Tulsa, Oklahoma is heavily lobbying Tesla for that location. I'll also add, if anyone didn't notice it, Elon tweeted that they're going to be pushing out Battery Day due to the attendance being very low. It sounds like they might do a webcast in June and then the on-site one several months later. So it's pushing into fall now. Because he says there's a lot of things to see. It's not just a PowerPoint presentation. So he wants people to be able to see and touch and interact. So I think we'll see that all slip because of COVID-19 and the lack of groups being allowed in California right now. So I wanted to give that update.
Yep.
I'd just like to second what you've given us there. Thanks, Glenn. I watched those videos last week as well, and it's a very, it's a 1 hour long video, but it takes a lot longer than that to listen to it, go back and check and try to understand what he's saying. But Ewan is incredible. I've seen him in the past as well, but he gives probably the most up-to-date assessment, at least that I've ever seen, on the state of battery technology, what's evolving, where it stands, the difficulties they're running into, and the successes they're having. Really, really good. And that was on the Transport Evolve website with a lady that does interesting videos too. Something he mentioned that I thought was quite intriguing that I had never heard of before, and I wonder if BC Hydro is paying attention. But one of the major investors, alongside Goodnow and Braga, Goodnow's at Texas A&M, Braga's from Portugal, but I think working with him in Texas, I'm not sure where, but one of their big investors is Hydro-Quebec. And so they'll have doing something within Quebec with this as well. So watch that. And it's kind of interesting to see the Quebec connection and then also the Dalhousie connection with Jeffrey Don and the work that he's doing with Tesla in particular. So very, very interesting. And then, of course, there's another Canadian at MIT who's working on grid-sized batteries. I think they're salt-based batteries that are basically designed for grid use, and they again can be charged fully, discharged fully, and not lose. And that's he's a Canadian working out of MIT, and he also has another Canadian PhD student working with him when they've set up a little company that's, I think, possibly in Connecticut or something that's working on this. But too bad that's not in Canada too. We seem to be losing out on this stuff, but not having, we have our brains, some of our brainy people involved, but not enough investors, and maybe Hydro-Quebec will wake things up and make some move in that direction. Thanks.
Well, keep in mind, and thank you for that, but Quebec also has North America's largest lithium reserves, if I'm not mistaken.
I had a question for Glenn. You mentioned that somebody commented that all cars could be electric, but did you really mean new cars purchased, or did you mean old cars could be retrofitted into being fully electric? Is that even something people think about? Taking out the engine, take all the unnecessary fuel out and replace it with a battery. Does that ever happen?
Well, of course, that's entirely doable. And if we had John Stornier on here, he could tell you how much fun that is.
It's a lot of fun, but it's sure not practical.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's the voice of experience.
Yeah. When you start to build an electric vehicle and you build it from the ground up as an electrical vehicle, it is so much more efficient. It is so much more cost effective than trying to convert something else. You're from an end point of view, you're better to recycle that vehicle, if it's especially if it's a dirty one, if that vehicle is recycled entirely, because we still need the steel, the rubber, all those other things that are in it to make new vehicles, that's probably the better go. The study that's done in the UK is looking at more at the fact is if every current vehicle in the UK was an electric vehicle tomorrow, each one of those vehicles would need, on average, just 5 kilowatts of energy to run every day. And then how do you achieve that? And it shows how that happens. So that's on Plug Life TV on YouTube, and I'll pass a link to Jim so we can put it in the show notes after. But it's a series called Watt Barriers, W-A-T-T Barriers. Yeah, it's fascinating, and everything they say in there, like the mileage driven daily, the amount of electricity required, are pretty much the same for Canada, right? Most of the world is urban, and we all drive less than about 30 or 35K a day. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else? Anyone else got questions? We're running past our 3 o'clock time now. That takes us to closing time, I guess.
Just a reminder, everyone, big SpaceX launch on Wednesday with the backup day of Saturday of the Bob and Doug going to the space station on SpaceX's Falcon 9. Don't forget to watch live.
Yeah, that's
It's a
exciting.
virtual tour event you can register for with NASA. I can share the link via one of our email blasts, but it is a virtual event where you do virtual tours since they're not letting anyone go on site. So if anyone wants to register, it's free. Definitely going to be worth it, I think.
Has anybody made a Bob and Doug meme for that yet?
No, I so want Bob and Doug to come out of retirement and do one. Like, it'd be awesome.
Someone made a Twitter hashtag that says Bob and Doug, but nobody's caught on to it. I think
I
it's because they're
know.
all Americans.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
Well, the Americans loved SCTV too. You know, Bob and Doug,
Exactly.
The
space.
smarter ones.
We so need a Bob and Doug episode of them going to space. It'd be so funny.
Let's go, Nate.
Don't be a hoser.
Anybody know Doug Thomas? Get him on Twitter.
Yeah, I actually tagged him on a tweet with Elon to see if I can get them talking, but it never went anywhere.
Try again.
I should.
David, can I jump in here with a couple of local announcements?
Yes, please, Jim Henshaw.
First of all, you may have heard of, there's a group here in town who are trying to start a pop-up drive-in movie theater, which is COVID safe for the summer. I met with them last night, looked at the space they've got in Esquimalt, can hold 100 cars, food and beverage available right next door. They're still trying to get past Esquimalt Council, but I don't think that's going to be too big a leap. As James and Lisa were saying, SpaceX launch is on Wednesday at 1:30 local time. And you can download an app, a SpaceX app, so that you can watch it on your phone or laptop or whatever you're dealing with. Also next week, I believe there will be a Welcome Home Rowan EV parade, but we'll get that to you once it's confirmed. And finally, our next coffee chat is scheduled for June 13th. Normally that would be at the Machosen Community House, and regulations are now allowing up to 50 people to meet without causing a problem. We're thinking that if we do it physically, it would be outside, but we're also wondering what everybody feels about that. So we're going to be sending out a Survey Monkey thing this week to poll or whatever, just to try and gain your input on when you want to start meeting again physically, how you want to handle that. And we're also considering keeping up these online Zoom things, maybe doing a midweek evening one, because there's so many people that can't attend on the weekends. So those are any input you've got with that regard, please let us know. And we move forward. David?
That's awesome. Thanks, Jim. I think that we should have a bit of a chat with some of us about the physicality involved with that outdoor thing. But so those ideas are wonderful. Unless somebody else has got something to pitch in with an announcement or a notice or some comment, you could wind this down. And I want to thank everybody, all our guests, Jim and James and Lisa there in California. Jim Stanton, of course, he had to move on. That was a real treat to hear from Salt Spring Island. Glenn, thank you for that great update. And I think, is that got it?
Yep.
Jim Heinsohn, I don't know if he's still online, but thank you again, Jim, for all your good presentation there as well. So, June meeting at Colwood Community House, I kind of feel like it would be fun to get out for the fresh air. The theater venue wouldn't be as amenable. We're lucky to have, I'm thinking 12 people there in the room if we could even make it work, but that's a closed-in room. I'm not so confident about that, but an outdoor thing I think might work. So has anybody else got anything to add?
Jim, I sent you that Plug Life link on the chat.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. The Nassau event is going on the page too, Jim. The Nassau launch.
Yeah, we'll get it out to people as soon as we got it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's all coming on. That's superb. Well, I'm all done. If somebody else, if you guys want to hang out and have a beer or something, that's up to you. But I've had my phone. Hi, Eric. I see you there grunting in the background. That's awesome.
I guess I should be on mute if I'm going to grunt.
Yeah, that's it. Your face popped up when you made. It's awesome.
Well, I just gave the thumbs up.
Oh yes, that's why it came up. Well, likewise.
Yeah. And then there's our California members.
Yes, right on. So shine on,
glad
folks.
they came.
Yeah. Shine on, folks, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.